An album a day is my exploration into the Korean music scene. This podcast will cover mainstream, indie, and some underground artists within the scene and provide both factual and opinionated commentary. The biggest benefit to sharing my thoughts this way is that it will hopefully expose you to more great music and exploration of your own.
You're tuned into an album a day. Show, start.
Well, good morning, everyone. We are recording from my classroom, so you might hear the rumblings and movements of little bodies and desks, but this is going to be a straight to the point episode because I only have 15 minutes before my students come in. So where we left off was on Hands Up. Hands Up was released June 20th, 2011. And then we had a stretch of time where the guys just weren't releasing Korean albums. We had Republic of 2 p.m., which was a strictly Japanese release that came out November 30th, 2011. And then they did Legend of 2 p.m. The next album, the next studio album that they actually had was Grown, which came out May 6, 2013. But in between that, we did have an EP released, an extended play. It was called Still 2 p.m. It dropped October 11th, 2010. So between 1:59 p.m., the debut album, and then Hands Up in 2011, they had a short little nugget of an album in the in-between. So we're going to address both that and Grown because, again, the other one was very short. An EP is not a full-length album. The EP was a little over 22 minutes long, literally 5 seconds over 22 minutes. And it's solely dance pop and hip hop. This was the one that unexpectedly hit the Billboard's World Album Charts. There was no promotions that were made in the US, and we discussed that in the previous album, like zero, zip, zilch, none. So I believe what influenced that is because two of the songs that were from this album, I'll Be Back and I Can't, were added on to Hands Up, and we talked about that. So, excuse me. I suppose, given the circumstance that some of those songs were already featured on the studio album that came out a little bit later, that was a benefit for the sales of this one. But this came before that. So I don't really know how that worked out. I guess it was just based upon the demand for the guys. The fandoms were very interested in them. Passive listeners became active listeners. So, hey, if it works, it works. What better way to make a strong impression than to release something and it turns around and gets you on a chart you wasn't even aiming for? So for K-pop fans, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being essential listening and 1 not worth mentioning, Still 2 p.m., the A3Day rating on that is a 5. Excuse me. Those 22 minutes did enough to bring enough people over into losing their minds over the second studio album from the gentleman, which was Hands Up. So going over to Grown, I love this album. I love this album. I love this album. Let me go back just a little bit. Darn near every song on Still 2 p.m. was written by J.Y. Park. So he really had his hand in everything. Music, the production, the mixing, the whole 9 yards. The only exception to that is Even If You Leave Me, which was done by Chang Dae or Kim Chang Dae. That's his actual name. He wrote it, composed it, produced, mixed it down, mastered it, the whole 9 yards. But it's a good, fast-paced little album. One shocker, and as I said very early on when we first got started with this, when I was talking about One Time, I said there's going to be some instances where we get to some artists and or projects where it's going to be a little bit of a fingernail chew for me. They have a song on Still 2 p.m. It's track number 6. Had to check. It's called Dance Tonight. Dance, the number 2, night, all squished together. The lyrics and the music are done by JYP, but the mix on it was arranged by R. Kelly, the infamous R. Kelly. So long before we got into this phase. Now, mind you, this is being recorded in fall of 2019. We are, heavily involved in a space and time where the artists are actively working with foreign producers and singers and songwriters and things. But this was taking place in the early 2010s as well. This wasn't new. And this isn't the first instance of this. So yes, R. Kelly had his hand on this. And even with that, I still maintain that it's a 5. All right, going over to Grown. This Grown is really ridiculous to explain something with using the same word, but this Grown album was grown, okay? Excuse me, it's the 3rd Korean studio album by the boys. It was the 5th overall. It dropped May 6, 2013, as I mentioned earlier. I'm getting tongue-tied. And my dinner got me coughing, y'all. I'm not sick. I just had a real lovely, spicy bokkeumbap, which is fried rice. It was real good, but the spices is choking me out now. So K-pop fans, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being essential listening and 1 not worth mentioning, the A3Day rating on Grown is a 5. It's a 5. This bad boy slapped for 44 minutes and 48 seconds. That is just wonderful. They had some promotion for the album that took place like May 2nd through the 31st of July. They gave us a good stretch of promo. It was wonderful. And they did the first performance of ADTOY, Hanepun. Oh, I love that song. They did the first performance of that in Countdown on May 16th. My birthday's May 1st, so I was all up in this. It was wonderful. There was a multitude of hands involved on this. Yes, JY Park, that's nothing new. But the lyrics, see, there we go, fangirling already. The lyrics for ADTOY, one of the writers for it was Taecyeon, which is really, really cool because that's my baby. So Taek wrote the second single on this, but he also had a hand in the first. So the singles from this was Come Back When You Hear This Song, which is one of the longest song titles in their entire history. And that's a very upbeat and charming Aegyo induced. For those who are not familiar with Aegyo, just think of it as being cutesy wootsy. Aegyo inducing type of track. And then they came back a few days later with ADTOY being super grown, and he wrote that. So Tech wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 songs on the album. Not solely, he contributed to the writing, but it counts nonetheless. And we articulated that a little bit earlier in their discography, that you're going to see an expansion of them really reaching in and having a hand on how those songs sound, how they feel, the lyrics and everything. Jun K closed out the album with At Times. He wrote the lyrics and composed the song. We also had Junho do a couple of things. He helped with some of the tracks as well. So it's 12 on here on the original. They had a bonus CD and a DVD of this bad boy too. The DVD was strictly for Malaysia though. It charted. At number 1 on Gaon, and then hit number 2, and then eventually it went down to 18. But they stayed in the top 50 no matter what with this bad boy. Come Back When You Hear This Song did better than ADTOY in terms of its placement on the charts. For download singles chart, it hit number 3, whereas ADTOY, I think people were just kind of, this is my personal opinion, I think they were just kind of jolted at the fact that the gentlemen are all grown now. And the album tells you that. It tells you it is grown. They also did something very strategic with the way that they released this as well. They did 3 versions for South Korea. They did a version A, which was digital download and CD, and that was released May 6th and May 13th. Then May 11th and May 23rd, they did it again as version B. And then they did a grand edition in June. It's a very smart way to guarantee that you are racking up some of the possible points for your album. So the May 6, 2013 release, that was available on iTunes in the United States, just as well as it was in South Korea. And then they expanded the distribution of it thereafter. They had a specific release that was a little bit later for Taiwan as well as Malaysia, but nonetheless, distribution was taken care of by JYP Entertainment, KT Music, Universal Music Taiwan, and Warner Music Malaysia. They did all that they could to distribute this as best as possible, and it worked. Again, it's darn near 45 minutes long. It's wonderfully organized. Even with me still having some bumps and bruises about some of the vocal strength on some of it, the vocal arrangements were more creative for the gentleman this go around. And it feels very good. It feels exceptionally modern. They dwelled more in the R&B pocket than they did that hip hop sound. I'm not saying it's not there, and R&B and hip hop kind of intermingle quite a bit within the industry as it is. So it's a very good feeling album. You've got something for every type of listener. I particularly love the way that ADTOY just gains on you, the symphonic touches to the song with all of the strings and whatnot over a usual R&B / hip hop drum pattern. It works very well. Another enjoyable song on here is Dangerous. I'm not very clear on who the writer and composer Ryan is. However, I do feel like that's going to be something that I need to delve a little bit deeper into and learn a little bit more about. So I do recommend those albums. I do recommend those songs. When we get to Friday, as I said, it's either going to be Friday or the end of their discography. I'm still deciding, but either way, that's going to end up on a Friday. We will still listen to a few snippets of some of my favorite songs from each album. So that concludes this one. I will catch you all in the next show. Bye, y'all.